right, we are back on the Connected Design podcast, and excited to have you on, Mr. Mitch Klein. I don't know, like I had this big introduction planned, but like I just want to have fun, man. I want to have a good conversation, and
Rob,
you don't
I'm
really,
right with you.
Yeah, you don't need an introduction. like,
you know they're embarrassing, if anything. So
I know. I don't know if are you a big podcast listener?
I listen to some, but yes.
New Heights. Are you familiar with the Kelsey brothers, Jason and Travis? Mr. Swift.
I'm gonna have, yes, actually, yes. So, I am familiar with those guys.
So
the brothers, yeah.
Right, so they love to do, well, Jason, obviously the Philadelphia Eagles center, being a Philadelphia guy, I know that, but Travis just had his big wedding. But every podcast, they love to share, they do the clips on social or whatever, and the one clip they always share to, like, preview that week's episode is Jason doing this massive, like, screaming at the top of his lungs, reading off all the accolades introduction. I could have. I feel like if I was going to do it, it could have been this episode for you, because your history in this channel and the accolades along with it are lengthy. And I should have done Jason, have him do a cameo.
I am disappointed, Rob, but I will expect this for our next one.
I know. We'll make it happen. No, that's awesome. Well, Mitch, I appreciate you joining and taking the time. And I know, too, we can... So I hate tying these to news, but like there is a little bit of news to talk about, and that's your recent announcement that a 33-year run, if you count the volunteer time plus, wow. Yeah, right? Isn't that? But who's counting? Yeah. I did the LinkedIn math. A 33-year run with CEDIA. We'll cut this show at its conclusion. I know right now you serve as VP of Business Development over there. Will officially come to an end. So heartfelt congrats, and bittersweet congrats.
well, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that, and it's a retirement, but not really. Right. It's really more for me the next chapter. So much to my network's dismay, I'm not going away, but I'm confident in some ways I will be visible within CEDIA or working with some of the team there. I mean, it's still the organization. I bleed, what is it now? I'm trying to remember the color. PMS Warm Red was the actual color CEDIA logo.
There you go.
And
that's awesome. Hey, it's better. It was an improvement over the orange, I got to say. I don't know.
It is actually the color.
Yeah. Oh, it is? Okay.
Oh, yeah, if you look it up, it
is orange?
Orange.
All right, so it's still not, all right, well. You know what it is? It's not as, I guess the logo, it's more subtle in sort of its nature, right?
It's tamed down a little bit over the years, yeah.
But, well, I know there will be a time and place to talk about your future, and I know, future conversations between us will certainly get into that. But I mentioned that length of time. I mean, you've seen a lot, go on at that organization. Did you think back to the early days, and I know you were there for them. Did you ever expect at the outset of, bringing CEDIA to life, that it would be what it is today?
Of course not. And the beauty was we were all a bunch of 20-somethings, so we didn't know any better. I mean, if we knew better, we would have never done this. I mean, and I'm not just talking about me. I mean, there's a whole bunch of folks who deserve kudos for the success CEDIA. I was just one of many. But we were making decisions back then that should have put us out of business, right? We were not necessarily calculating things the way current businesses should really evaluate opportunities. We just saw things and went for it. And fortunately, it's turned out pretty good. We still got a lot of work to do. CEDIA still has a lot of work to do. I mean, the industry keeps growing. And for me, I could have never charted the course. So you say I've been involved with CEDIA for 33 years, but not entirely the same way, right? I've had a very unique experience in terms of crawling through attics and owning my own business, media systems. So I definitely feel for every one of our integrator members and non-members. I understand how challenging. I mean, and I will tell you, that was the hardest job I ever had. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I would back that up with experience too. But even from there, going into doing some consulting, and then even at one point being in the semiconductor business for 10 years, no one could have predicted that. And so that was more opportunistic than anything else.
Yeah.
And through it all, yeah, I came back to my peeps to come back to CEDIA for a couple of years.
Yeah, and well, I'm glad you sort of took that route of talking about this, because like CEDIA, you can almost divide yourself in half, right? Like CEDIA was one half of your career history. The other half, you've kind of experienced this channel from every angle, from the integrator side, the consulting side, the manufacturer side, the trade. I know Z-Wave was in there as well.
Yep.
Like
Chip side, the wireless communication side. Yes.
Yeah, right. So like you've seen kind of all, like talk about that just the holistic experience that you've been able to have in this industry.
It's really being able to bring some wisdom, I would say, to some of the challenges that we all face every day. Understanding the challenges in control systems, but then with my deep understanding of the wireless technologies, how does that play out? Well, are they proprietary? There's a lot of proprietary stuff out there, which is basically why we run into a lot of challenges. When you talk about proprietary, there's just so much R&D and engineering that you can throw at it. Whereas if it's more of a standard, if you will, and there's many standards, but whether it's a Wi-Fi standard or a Z-Wave standard or other things, you've got many, many, many companies working on these standards. And so being able to understand that standards are what makes things more reliable than going proprietary. There are exceptions, and I can probably tap some of those, but even those exceptions, when they want to become interfaced with some of the other technologies out there, smart home systems or what have you, the proprietary doesn't work anymore. Now you've got to start looking at what kind of standard, or the bane of the existence of all of us integrators, having to write our own interfaces,
right?
Things like that. So anyway, but yeah, so that's sort of brings that, kind of full circle.
Yeah. And I mean, the cool thing to like the being able to have those experiences while also, again, like concurrently working and volunteering with CEDIA, you kind of get to bring those into the organization, and like, does that influence sort of how, from your perspective, and I know you mentioned it, right? So many other professionals that were a part of this, the early days to now especially, does that influence, or how has that influenced sort of the work you've done on the association side?
Well, I like to say I get listened to all the time, but that's not necessarily the case. But it does have very positive influence when one considers where my direction or input comes from. It generally doesn't come from a personal, what's in it for me kind of thing. It's generally, what's good for the industry kind of stuff. And again, my associates who've been through this with CEDIA would basically say the same thing.
Yeah. No, and it's cool to see too, because again, to your point, right? There are so many voices in the room. I had to be like just the experience, seeing the people that were involved in it early on to where you guys all are today. You think of some of the the names that were involved in the early days, but the channel maturing too. Like, I have to imagine you take a lot of that into consideration as on the your day-to-day work, what you're doing, but on especially the association side, as things change, like how does both the organization but also the industry have to evolve alongside kind of what you're doing, and how you're looking to accomplish what it is you are as an organization?
Yeah, first of all, the smart ones that I work with have already retired. They were smart. And just a little off the topic for a second, but the network, actually, it's really kind of two networks that I've built. Obviously, the CEDIA network, which is near and dear to my heart, as well as from the semiconductor side, built that network as well. But these are folks that I consider my friends. So if retiring means I lose my friends, then I'm not going to retire, right? in the traditional sense. And by the way, I'm open to anyone's thoughts on defining what retirement means. I certainly have as much energy now as I've had in the past. So I mean, I can't imagine, living out the next 25 years on a beach or on a golf course or fly fishing. I'll do all of those things, yes, but that's not all I want to do.
Right.
I want to keep contact with.
Well,
with
that's.
what's going
I
on.
think that speaks to obviously you and kind of your passion about around this space, but also the space, right? Like just how it's kind of. I know there's jokes about the degrees of separation between. We could make steps between us and like some organization or some other like it is a small industry, so it does become like a family, right? So that there's something to that as far as people don't go far. Like they come into this industry and for whatever reason, I know there's myriad reasons why you become an integrator or you end up on the manufacturing side, and like there's a lot of just musical chairs, but like not in a negative sense, right? Like people like to stay in this channel.
I like to say that we are holistically, what's the term? We're environmentally sound. We recycle our people.
Yeah.
You can't leave. Right?
For better and worse.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But what's really exciting now, and especially today, what's going on right now, technology and requirements are moving so fast. The obvious thing, we're all going to go, yeah, AI. Well, don't go, oh yeah. I mean, what you know today about AI changes next week. The capabilities change. So there's that. How is that impacting our industry? And you can't just basically put together a 3-year strategy around it,
Right?
Because it's more like a 3-week strategy. I mean, you got to be nimble. But it's not just that. There's all the other things around it that you must constantly be aware of. Cybersecurity is a biggie, which I know from a CEDIA perspective and from an education perspective, we're all in on that in terms of being able to prepare CEDIA members for that. And by the way, when I say CEDIA members, I include manufacturers, reps. It's not just integrators.
Yeah.
But things are changing so freaking fast that we almost need to come up with an entirely new way to educate, because by the time we develop and print or publish or what have you, we need to create an addendum already, and things are moving that fast. So that's a challenge that we have not really addressed, nor have we actually solved. But for all of us in this channel, in what we call the CEDIA channel, whether you're a CEDIA member or not, you're in the channel, right? That's a big challenge.
I risk going down a rabbit hole of this, but I'll try to keep it at a surface level, because I know we could have a whole conversation around AI.
Next
have
time.
you? Yeah, right. Have you seen a disruption or anything? Another innovation, whatever you want to call it. Throughout your career that has been as impactful as AI has.
Certainly not as fast as it's had impact. No, not really. And because it's a, calling it a technology, I mean, whatever you want to call it, it's still in its infancy. And that's the scary thing. And then how the robotics that work around AI, and then all the applications, whether we're talking about the classic aging in place, or we're talking about specific challenges, like helping people with Parkinson's in their home. And I mean, there's just so many things. And where AI can really be the big solution is with all this great hardware that's out there. AI can actually wrap it all together to a solution. So
yeah,
I think there's some great opportunities, but I'm not seeing it yet. But I know for a fact there are many backroom operations working on it.
Yeah, well, and that's the unique thing, is that because it is so fast moving and so like quickly evolving. I know we just a couple weeks ago had, which feels like 10 years ago in AI terms, but just did a roundtable with a bunch of really smart people in this channel on AI and how they're implementing it in their businesses or as their business. And it's just unique to see, all the idea sharing that's out there. People are wanting to learn and, see what others are doing so they can try to apply. But I mean, what's also really unique about it is, you can go to 5-10 different businesses and they all could be using it in different ways that are great for their businesses. So there's so much to learn about it and how but maybe that's also what makes it difficult, is there is no sort of cookie cutter way of applying, all of these tools or apps or agents. Again, pick your term, your AI buzzword, but it's so vast, this space.
Well, we won't go down that rabbit hole. I will just say that CEDIA is very much actively investigating and working on it. And we have a volunteer team on the education side that are seriously committed to working through the AI challenges and how to make that a thing for members and make it useful. So
yeah,
stay
that's
tuned
awesome.
for that.
A nice little cliffhanger there for sure. But kind of going back, you mentioned media systems and your time there, and I know one of the things I know we've talked many a time, but you know, in the last couple of weeks around your time there, a story that you shared, something about how the work you were doing when you were there. I'm not going to steal your thunder. I want you to be able to tell it, but I just remember the takeaway for me being that the conversations you were having then aren't too different from what we're having now, and that's really all I wanted to kind of lead with, to let people as they hear you talk about it, sort of listen to it and try to find that themselves in this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, I was way ahead of myself, and not just me. There were others also that were way ahead, which ultimately became CEDIA. But this is pre-CEDIA, with not having it. And there was a time, I'll say this was in the late 1980s. Yeah, that's right. I go back that far, folks. Early 90s, where there was a unique type of affluence, and the affluence was basically where they had things you couldn't get. I have a resource you don't have. I have my guy, you don't. And so working at the retail level with a company called Tweeter, et cetera, way back, having expensive gear and just not really getting the audience coming in, because the audience wasn't going to come in. They're not going to go to a retail store. Anyone could do that. So we ended up opening up a showroom in the Boston Design Center. Again, you look at it now and go, yeah, well, everyone does that. Well, back then, no one did that at all. And that was kind of a big leap on my part. So we figured the affluent are building homes, they're using designers, they're using architects. Where do they go to shop? They go to shop at the design center. And so that's why we opened up there. Now you say, of course, but the time, we were not very well received. Oh, the landlord loved us, but the designers did not. The architects did not. They saw us as disruptors. Designers saw us as just basically stealing the furniture budget from their clients, for all of the audio and video, which at the time that was all it was just audio and video. And so we weathered the storm. We joined the ASID. We did presentations to the AIA. We did our best to try and create good relationships with them, which the good news is now we're seeing that, which is what, 30 years later?
Yeah, right?
It's taken that long. We had a couple of good ones that we work with, but for the most part, we were not taken kindly. So what happened was, and we started the CEDIA thing, and I had one of my industry buddies had a showroom also in their design center in Minneapolis. Jeff Cussard, as a matter of fact. And we were talking, and the space next to my showroom became available, and it just so happened I was befriending Theo Calamarakis, and I went to, he had a show house, the Kip Space Show House, actually, in New York, and he had put a theater in there, actually built all these pillars and everything in the theater. And when the show house was done, I said to Theo, what are you going to do with the theater? And he said, I don't know. You want it? And I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
What the heck?
Why not?
And so we had the space next door, and we dedicated to a dedicated theater. I went to my buddies at JBL, and we worked out putting a synthesis system in there. I talked to my buddy Sam Runco and said, I'm going to need a projector, and told him what we were doing. He thought I was nuts, and he said, yeah, let's do it then. No one was dedicating that kind of space to a theater, right? And so he came in, and long story short, we had this really killer theater with Synthesis 1 and the line doublers from Ferrucci, and all the things that you can imagine back in the 90s now. And we would take architects and designers in to experience it, which was great. And on their way out, they would go, wow, that's amazing, but not in my house. That's what I kept hearing. Right. Oh, that's amazing, but not in my house. But the key was we exposed them to what could be.
Right.
And then they say, well, how can we take this and now deploy it in what I'm working on, my designs? And of course, we were like, your designs come first, we'll fit it in, kind of thing. Again, now it's but.
Right. Well, it's again, like I said at the top, right? It's the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's a lot of the conversations are still happening, and have been happening. I don't know how many people would think that they were happening 30 years ago, and the fact that they were, and the fact that you guys had the foresight to get in there and try to start, forming those relationships, speaks a lot to just the amount of time and effort and work that had to be put in. What those conversations you were having then, obviously the reactions are different. Maybe they get it a little bit more today than they did back then. But the way you approach them, is there anything that, still applies today in how you were talking to designers and architects back in, in the time in that showroom?
Well, yeah, it's a collaboration.
Right.
I mean, and that it's simply put like that. I mean, I remember having conversation with one of the designers who was saying, who was thrilled at our approach. And he goes, I just had a house. A guy shows up with these big speakers, and he says, where do you want me to put these speakers? And the designer says, I'll tell you where I want you to put those speakers.
There's a garbage can out front.
Or up a personal body part. But, so it's still the same. It's still the same thing. It's a collaboration. And I think much of the design community at least is aware of the technologies. Back then it was like, can't you just hang this on the wall? And hell, a 35-inch glass tube TV hanging on a wall is a bit of a challenge. These things are 160 pounds or something like that. But now you can. So now we have the solutions that will actually fit these requirements. Back then we had to be way, way creative. Build a closet behind the wall and make it look like that big TV is hanging on the wall when in fact it's actually sitting on a shelf in the closet behind it. But now we've got a lot of solutions available to us. So
I know a lot of that obviously is technology advances, right? The TVs have gotten thin. I say smaller. They've gotten bigger,
bigger but thinner,
bigger but thinner and lighter, right? So I know a lot of that has to do with advancements in display technology and the everything inside of the TV, but at the same time it feels like almost like the technology industry was listening to designers that wanted some of these solutions that would better fit what they like to get these channels closer. And I mean, talk about the progress you've seen in that regard. I know to some it might not feel like there's been much, but at the same time, I mean, you see the things, you go to what CEDIA is doing and the hires that have been made to get closer to that channel and, showing up at different shows that are out there. And, what have you seen from a progress standpoint as it relates to technology and the design build channels becoming, closer together or more streamlined?
I'd love to say that the manufacturing industry has become sensitized to the needs of the design community, but I really can't say that across the board. There are definitely some, absolutely. Companies like Samsung and Sony, what they're doing with their art TVs. I mean, obviously, that's brilliance. That's great use of technology, yes. Some speaker companies, I don't want to go start, building brands up, but, there are definitely some brands that have made a really good headway into that. So, I'm not sure where.
How about on the integrator side? Like, do you see those conversations? Like, are integrators understanding how to better position themselves as a partner, or what from a progress standpoint there, as far as understanding? I think the common refrain we hear is when you're approaching a designer or a builder, it's less about specs and more about experience. Do you see that message getting through and carrying? In sort of the conversations that are happening today?
Yes, most definitely. And there's a third piece to it, which is ease of use. Make it simple, make it simple. And simple can mean multiple things. Simple can mean simple to use, or simple can mean simple gear, which is not necessarily simple to use. So you have to define in that. But yes, actually the good news is there's some really, really talented integrators around. I mean, quite a few of them actually, who are very, very talented and very sensitive to the design requirements and are working in collaboration. So this is why CEDIA is making a significant investment in outreach to the design community now, because we've convinced the CEDIA channel side of the value and the importance of the collaboration. Now we got to convince the design community side. And it's generally well received, but it's also not generally well aware of what's available.
Right.
So.
Well, and that's a big part of this too, right? I know this channel, I know we've talked about it. I know this channel has talked about it. I think the example I always go back to, and I don't know if I've mentioned it on a podcast specifically, but if not, I'll bring it to the table here. There's those, the like best home publications that get sent out across, if you open your mailbox like once a quarter, you'll see this, mini white page looking thing that has all bunch of services listed inside of it, from your HVAC to your plumbing to your deck guy to the roofer. And, there's all of these services in there. That if a designer or a builder needed to go find someone, to a GC to go out and add this person to their team for a home that they're working on, like, it's there. What you won't find is an integrator. So the discovery aspect of this channel, I know, has always constantly been a struggle. So I mean, I know there's much to be done, and I know a great thing that CEDIA has been working on, obviously, is the down in the Hill Days that have been going on, and getting awareness around the trade itself. Because if I remember right, you're the one that told me right now this trade is classified as like telephone pole operators. Is that right?
Telephone repair is generally where we get classified, which into climbing telephone poles. Yeah.
Right. I don't know how well that stacks up to going in a home and hanging a TV, but and I know that's a way understatement of what this channel does, but it's not. That is, it's not 6 dozen of one, half dozen of the other. They are two different things. So I know that work has been crucial to gaining recognition. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm looking for your input. My question here is your input on how have things improved, and what do you think the next steps are in terms of getting this channel to whether it's be respected? I don't know if it's taking it too hard to say to be respected, or just made aware of.
Yeah, I don't think respected is the right term, because you have to earn the respect. So each integrator is going to have to earn that respect one at a time. We can't establish that as CEDIA, earn the respect. Well, what we can do is earn the recognition that the need exists. Yeah. Right. That you need to bring in an expert. And I know there are a lot of integrators out there that actually get their referrals through the design community, because they recognize the need that these days it's not just simply hang a TV and you're done. There's a lot of complications around that, obviously, with all the different subsystems. We call it smart home. Even if it's not smart home, there's a bunch of subsystems, whether it's lighting and security and audio and a media room, things like that. So it's just the awareness is really what we can do to try and build the rapport with the different design organizations that say, I recognize the need for it. Now, where do I go and find someone? Yeah. And that's kind of where CEDIA is. We want to be some of that matchmaker and enable that relationship to start. Yes. I'm
glad you led that off the way you did, because the association did everything you're saying there can do a great deal of, and has done and continues to do a great deal of work. But it's almost like the getting the ball to the goal line type analogy, right? Like the association can get it there, but from a respect standpoint, it's up to that integrator in their market to take the ball, whether it's a pass, whether they're just turning around, handing it off, whatever it might be, and punch it into the end zone, and build those relationships. And so I thank you for that. I think that's an important thing to mention. But yeah, I mean, the ones that are doing it, there are plenty of examples that of integrators that have gone out there and built those relationships. The benefits to them as a business, I think, myriad. There are many of them, right? So. What do you see, like the ones that are doing it well? I'm not asking you how are they building respect or getting respected, but are there any unique or common things that they're out there doing in their markets to, get in with that channel, get in with those builders and designers that you're seeing?
Yeah, I would say the real key is the education piece. So, CEDIA, we have a program, Design Build Professional, DBO, I think we're calling it now, design, anyway, you can actually take some training on that and what have you and get certified for it. But whether you're certified or whether you're not, the key is the education piece. I know what I used to do, and you can still absolutely do it now, is you want to reach out to the librarians of the different architecture firms. There is a job called librarian, because you didn't know that.
Yeah.
And the librarians, because there's so many aspects of design an architect has to deal with, and you want to get in there and bring what we call it a lunch and learn. And this is not news, and I would hope everyone's aware of these things, because architecture firms, they want them. They need the CEUs, set some time up in November, December, because they're getting to the end of the year and they need the CEUs to get them in. Bring lunch in, and CEDIA's got programs that you can deliver, or you can deliver your own program, but you need to get the CEU approved, but I digress. That's one way to do it. Events are another way to do it. And really, it's just doing it the old-fashioned way. You've got to get out and knock on doors and build a relationship. The majority of the projects involve some type of construction. And so there's your entree right there through the construction. There's always someone designing something in the construction project. And hopefully not news to any of folks.
Right. No, that's awesome. But always good. And hopefully not news to your point, but always good to hear it and sort of reiterate the fact that there are things that are common across the channel that others are doing, and that CEDIA also offers support for to help you accomplish. So. I look at the time. I know we could keep going, and I want to, but I also want to be respectful. Right? Already half hour in, right? So it's quick. Yeah, right. Crazy how this goes. But I wanted to ask. Want to kind of close on one question and reflective question for you. But again, I mentioned the 3 decades plus, at CEDIA in some form or fashion. Is there one thing as you look back on that time, that you're most proud of having accomplished with the organization?
That's a hard call because there are so many of them.
Yeah.
I'd have to say, from my perspective, I'm trying to remember what year it was, 1997, 1998, somewhere around then. I think some of you were born then. There was a piece of legislation that was about to get through the Rhode Island I want to call it governance. And I was in Boston, but I heard about this because, again, it's next door, which essentially would have required a licensure for anyone having anything to do with a wire, any kind of wire. And it would have essentially put anyone in Rhode Island would have put them all out of business.
Wow.
And so I looked at that. And by the way, these aren't laws. These are little amendments that fit in between a law that's about to go out.
Right.
So, how you even find out these things is, that's a whole challenge that CEDIA takes on. But anyway, so I found out about this thing, and I said, okay, we got to do something about this. And the good news was I was the incoming president of CEDIA. So guess what? I can do something about this. So I stood up in front during my inauguration, as you will. We used to do that at our expos. And the incoming president was expected to come in and state what their agendas are for the next 2 years, because this is a 2-year thing. And I laid out the fact that we were going to start paying attention. We were going to address some legislation and government affairs, which we were not doing. And so I launched the government affairs initiatives, which ultimately halted that legislation by us being somewhat creative and working, believe it or not, working with the Verizon side, which was union at the time, working with the unions. You'd think we would have been enemies. The enemies saw this. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The Verizon folks saw this as a threat to their folks too.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So again, you're what is it? The enemy of my
enemy is my friend.
or something like that. So very strange bedfellows, but it enabled us to realize, what, we can have an impact.
Yeah.
And of all the things that I've done a lot of things to help influence. I think that has actually been the most impactful, and CEDIA is still very much deep into it today.
Well, yeah. I mean, especially even just like accomplishing that is to begin with is awesome. But then just the longer term impact of, there was no attention being paid to
Right.
government affairs, and to see what it is today, and sort of how those efforts have evolved. I know it's an entire department, and
It's huge.
now it's a multi-year event of going to Capitol Hill and showing face, on a national stage, which is really cool.
It's
to see.
national and it's state by state, and
Yeah.
in some cases it's one metropolitan area and another much. So it's not always just
Right.
even the state. So it's an enormous thing. We do round up volunteers. We're lucky about that. We've got some good volunteers that step up and help, because we have to testify at some of these events as to why a particular legislative amendment may be harmful. But again, it's a never-ending challenge.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, cool to hear. And I know, to your point, right, like you mentioned, there's so many things you could call out that I know over time maybe we'll get to.
It'd be fun. We can get into some fun stories too.
Heck yeah. No, well,
there are
hey,
a lot of those.
yeah, we'll see. Maybe we may have to throw whatchamacallit, like the Netflix ratings on here.
Yeah, right.
For no, that's awesome. Well, Mitch, this was a lot of fun to just be able to sit down and chat with you and kind of pick your brain on how this channel has evolved. And I certainly look forward to doing it again, man. This was great.
Yeah, thank you. It is fun, and I appreciate you, Rob. Thank you for having me on.